my name is Zelzel. Welcome back to Amateur Apologetics. I have, of course, here with me my dear sibling, Lunar Smiles. I'll just grab it over here for a second. Shiny. All right. So I was just kind of going over what we were doing last time. So we're kind of in the last week of Jesus's life, actually. That's sort of what chapter 21 through 28 basically foretells or expresses. So basically last time when we were reading the Bible, we're reading Matthew, the book of Matthew right now. We're in chapter 23 right now. But in chapter 21, basically Jesus has gone through up to about 3 years. I think is the presumption that Jesus had a ministry for 3 years around Jerusalem, in and around Jerusalem in the countryside. He didn't really go too much further than that. But yeah, so finally, and he's been to Jerusalem several times, not just as an adult, but as a child. But this is sort of like his last trip to Jerusalem. He's coming, I think he's coming for the Passover feast, which is a Jewish tradition or Jewish festival about the whole enslavement in Egypt thing. So for those who don't know, the old story goes very quickly that the Jewish people were enslaved for about 400 years by Egypt, and there was a prince of Egypt who was saved at the last second, who is actually Jewish and was raised as an Egyptian, named Moses, who eventually leaves and comes back to save the Israelites, or the Jewish people, from their enslavement. And so there's these 12 plagues that happen. Pharaoh doesn't let him go, and there's a whole movie about it. Let my people go. It's very famous. And eventually Pharaoh does let them go, and they cross the Red Sea, and Pharaoh just changes his mind and goes with his army and gets the whole sea gets parted. They cross the Red Sea, and the sea closes up on the Egyptian army. And yeah, it sucks for Egypt, I guess, but then they end up going to the desert, and eventually they get to Israel. And so that's the whole Passover feast happens, is about the last plague, where they painted blood around their doors so that the spirit of God, spirit of death, would pass over them and instead take the firstborn child of the Egyptians. That was the kind of last straw where Pharaoh's child also dies. That's why they get to leave, because God shows up. Question, yes. Go ahead, Coco. Sorry, I think I really sped through that. How long did you study the Bible and etc.? So I guess you could say I've unprofessionally studied the Bible from 2009 to 2017. So the first, the New Testament in particular, I've studied probably the most, so that's why I'm starting with it. Besides the fact that it's the crux or the centerpiece of Christianity is Jesus, the story of Jesus. I originally started it as I started reading it intending to disprove the supernatural and the religious, the nonsensical theological arguments that God exists and that Jesus was the Son of God and all that stuff. And so that was my intention originally. And then, I would say once I got to the book of Romans, I became a Christian, which is 5 books for the record. So it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the book of Acts, and then Romans. So I'm pretty sure about halfway through Romans. So the 6th book of the Bible, I became a Christian. That's not to say that everybody who does that, reading those first 5-6 books, will become a Christian. Far be it that, for me to presume that. But I was also studying informally at the same time apologetics proper, which is why it's called amateur apologetics in the first place, which is the root word of amour, or to love in French, and apologetics, which is apologia, which is to make a defense of. So I love to make a defense of, in particular, Christianity. And it's not meant to be a professional or an expert by any means. It's just a casual, it's my passion, I guess. So it's good. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. So I guess more specifically, I went to school from 2016 to 2018, 19, 20, 21-ish, so about 4 years. And I got I have 9 credits before I get my Bachelor of Christian Formation, which is, or also known as Spiritual Formation, which is the difference between an academic and a theological degree, in such a way that it's kind of like a modern monkhood, I guess you could call it. So it's my desire to walk with individuals in particular, to challenge them, to make the case that I can make, to look into theology proper, but in particular to recognize that there is a side to the human being that cannot be encompassed in your body and your mind, that there is an actual spiritual part of you. You could call it a trinity of your own, right? So you have a body, you have a mind, but you also have a spirit. You have something that requires attention, and it requires fulfillment, and it requires growth, and yeah, that kind of thing. So I want to feed people's spirits, not me, shoveling stuff into you, but to guide them to be able to grow properly in the soil that they find themselves in. So another question. Yes, Coco. Zell and I may not always agree, but he is one of the smartest and most genuine people I know, and I love hearing his views and ideas. Thanks, Shanna. I appreciate you. And I always enjoy listening to what you have to say on whatever topic you say it. Again, I guarantee we probably don't agree on a lot of things, but I mean, neither do Lunar and I. Lunar is a lot more neutral. Correct me if I'm wrong, yep. But yeah, you tend to be like,
perfect.
Yeah.
I'm a neutral good for sure.
Yeah, you're a neutral good. If it comes to D&D, you would be a neutral good person, and I think that I'm probably lawful good if I were to choose it, but that doesn't mean that it's better or worse than others. It's an orientation of how one works with morality, I guess. Is it chaotic? Is it just off the cuff and you just do it by emotion, or do it by snap judgments kind of thing, or do you have it methodically, carefully thought out, or are you a combination of both those things, and you weigh things severely with the time that you have, kind of things? I'd be somewhere between lawful and chaotic. Yeah, I think you'd probably be somewhere in there, maybe. Yeah, I think you're probably somebody who would be lawful is what I would think too, Shanna. I think that a lawful person tends to have they have a paradigm, or they have a structure of thought to everything that they do. And so you don't necessarily react willy-nilly, you react fast, but because you already have a set structure, and it allows you to sort of, okay, well, I'm in this situation, I already know what that is back in the past, and I know how that fits in, so I go with that. So that's kind of how I think. What inspired the idea of the stream? Idea to stream this topic, knowing it can be a controversial topic. I probably thought of it. I feel the same way too. Oh, thanks. I probably thought of streaming this probably as my first idea. I mean, I was in Bible college at the time, and I had the first idea I had when it came to Twitch was, I suppose there's 3 things. One of the things is I didn't think that it was possible. And I always like being the contrarian. I always like, I think I just feel chaotic. Yeah, I mean, you might. That's understandable. I think for me, I perceived Twitch as a particularly biased platform when I first looked into it. And I don't mean that in terms of like just a political type of thing or anything like that, but I felt like it had a very specific young group of people who played video games, yes, but had a very myopic view of the world. And if you didn't fit into that, from what I perceived, I felt like Twitch might be like shutting down some voices. So I thought, you know what? I don't tend to be particularly harsh. I don't think, like, there's a lot harsher people out there anyway. Maybe I could be more of a neutral voice that tries to see all sides and be open-minded and engaging with people. And that's because I've come from that background. I also did and do at the same time, like playing video games. So I thought, I actually wrote a paper, my first youth ministry paper when I first thought about being a youth minister, was on the applicability of the gospel in video games. And it had to do not just with the fact that a lot of video games and the stories and role-playing games that exist, do they borrow from a lot of the archetypes that you find in scripture, as lots of books do, because in my view it is the greatest story ever told. It has all these typologies and all these archetypes throughout scripture that you can find in virtually any pop culture reference if you really look at the things. I'm not saying that they're intending to do that, but they have those foundational types that they draw from. And I think somebody even said that there's only really 5 or 7 true stories or stories in the world, and they're all the same story skeleton, and then you just put the flesh and the skin on in different ways, right? So and I think that the Bible is no different than that. It is a foundational story. It is just a story that reveals these types throughout it. So anyway, I won't get into that. So I guess my hope was to bridge a gap that I thought was there, and bring along with it a measure of my own meager knowledge or expertise, if you want to call it expertise. And yeah, hopefully that comes across. So it's been in the making for a while. I did it very implicitly, where I just hoped to show a relatively decent character, a person that you can sit down with and chill with, and you're not offended by just by hanging out with them, kind of thing. So that was kind of my goal. And then when it comes to the controversial topic, if you want to call it controversial, I just thought it was time. It was. I think I haven't read the Bible in 2 years up until doing this podcast. So offended. Yeah. So I mean, I had kind of. I wouldn't say I didn't ditch the Bible or anything like that, but my own faith walk, my own mental health and everything like that put me kind of in a sometimes they'll call it the dark night of the soul, where sometimes you just go through the desert, and there's, whether you're reading inspirational text or around inspirational people or working hard to be inspired, you find yourself in a place that is arid and dry and full of dust, and nothing is nourishing, and you become bitter and all that stuff. And so that's up until recently, that's where I was. And so now I'm just doing my own personal journey and enjoying, doing it on Twitch. So that was probably the longer version of that answer. Hopefully it makes sense. But yeah, I was happy to be joined by Lunar here, and thought it'd be cool to
always happy.
Yeah. Just kind of voice it out and say, hey, what do you think about this? So, yeah, anyway, all that to be said, like I said, just going back to where we are here. We're back in Jesus's last week of life, essentially. And he has expressed that he is the Messiah that is to come. He's had some followers that finally have clued in, the severity, not just of who he is, but have also been challenged by Jesus personally, saying, you think you understand what the Messiah is going to be like, I'm going to change your mind of that, or I'm going to try and reveal to you that what I'm actually like isn't what your expectations are. And so he starts off in Matthew 21 entering like a king would, but in a way that a king wouldn't at the same time. So he kind of has all the people lay out these branches for him, almost like a red carpet, but instead on a horse with a big crown and a mighty army behind him. He's with a bunch of poor people, just some lepers and other people that he's healed, and all this stuff. And he's riding on not even a donkey, but the colt of a donkey, a baby donkey. And so he's not coming in like, I'm coming to rule the world sort of thing, as you would imagine a king to be. And yet he's still playing to the type, the archetype of what a king might do. And so his first act is he goes to the temple, and the temple is divided into essentially three parts. You have the courtyard, you have the temple building itself, and then you have a curtain dividing the temple's last third of the building to the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant is, which is essentially the footstool or the seat of God, where God sits down, and nobody but the high priest is supposed to go in there. And so he enters the courtyard, and it's supposed to be a place of holy sacrifice, with sacrifices from the people or on the people's behalf by the priesthood. And instead, it's filled with animals to be sold, a bunch of merchants just getting rich off the poor by selling them these birds that they can then, very conveniently then sacrifice or give to the priests. And Jesus comes in and he goes berserk. He starts tossing money changing tables and telling everybody's like, you've made my Father's house into a den of thieves, you absolute hypocrites. And he just tears them down. And nobody's done this. This is like extremely unprofessional at the time, for a rabbi, for a teacher of his station. So upsets a lot of people, but at the same time very convicting. So he kind of cleanses the temple, and then one of the other things, and I bring this up a lot because I actually think it's one of the key expressions of Jesus that seems to kind of get dismissed or not focused upon. At least that's my view of it. But the recognition that the prototype of a human being is like children. And so when Jesus' own disciples try and shoo away the children, you're bothering Jesus, you're bothering the teacher, he's like, seriously, don't do that. Let the little children come to me. It's like these types of people. These little children are the prototype of the person that exists in the kingdom of God, in heaven, on earth. He's like, so what you see in them, try to emulate these guys. Stop being arrogant, stop being prideful, stop being selfish and trying to confuse things and make things more complex than they are. Be like a child, be innocent, be open-minded, be willing to have your heart open as well to receive, and so yeah, he does that a few times, and to me that's the prototype of what a Christian ought to be, right? Is one who is childlike. So then the priests and the Sadducees, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, which are kind of the priesthood and the teachers of the law, the kind of legalistic kind of people, the lawyers you could call them, are basically trying to test him, trying to say, are you really a good guy? Are you really a good teacher? And he basically shuts them down with parables and with questions of his own, sort of undermining their own authority and recognizing, actually, no, I am who I say I am. I'm the guy, sort of thing. And yeah, does again a couple more parables. Also catches them into this idea that should you tithe, or not should you tithe? Should you pay your taxes to the government, kind of thing? At the time, it was Caesar. And he's like, you know what? Show me one of these. What do you pay the tax with? It's like it's a drachma. It's the Italian, or the Roman rather, drachma, which is call it like a $10 piece or something like that, or 10-cent piece. I can't remember. And he's like, whose face is on this? And they say Caesar's. He's like, okay, well, give Caesar what is his. If it's Caesar's stuff, then give it to him. If it's God's stuff, though, give it to God. And they were all like, wow, that's actually pretty good. So And then finally he goes to what my primary command, because it's Jesus' primary command, because I follow Jesus. He says, this is the most important command. Here's actually two for you: to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And the greatest, and the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. Right. And so the word that he's using is agape in the Hebrew, in the Greek, sorry. And so in the Greek, he's using agape, and agape translates to sacrificial or self-sacrificing love. And so you love another person at the cost of yourself, right? You put other people above yourself, at the very least on par with yourself. And so how you would go through life seeking out and feeding your own desire, your own hope, and all that stuff. Treat the other person with that same amount of fervor, with that amount of respect, with that amount of care and concern. And I think that's really, I don't know, like, to me, that if you can, the reason why I call what my beliefs are principles is because laws tend to be very specific, whereas principles tend to be very broad and apply to all things. And so think of a principle, or the way that Jesus talks about the greatest law or command, as a lens through which you can see. And if you act in a way that automatically is what would you say, transformed into a law or into a principle of love, then you can at least gauge whether anything you're seeing is right and wrong, right? So if you're doing something that is not in accordance with loving the Lord your God, we can make that even more simple and say the greatest conceivable good. If what you're doing is not in accordance to that, and in accordance to putting other people at least on the same platform or higher in value than yourself, then you know it's wrong. It's that simple. And so to me, that helps to take down some of the moral conundrums that people get into. Oh, is this the right thing? Is this the wrong thing? And if you can just filter it through that lens, then you'll be able to very easily figure out what is right and wrong in any given situation, And I think anybody who really looks at that, I think fairly objectively, hopefully, can say, yeah, you know what? That's something to live your life by, to live your life by the principle of love. And, it's not easy. It's hard, and it goes to show the type of creature you are, and the creature that I am, which is, if I'm really honest with myself and I put myself up against that lens, then I say, I don't really want to do that because I am a selfish bastard, or whatever else. So, but at least that's the key. A lot of people will go to great lengths to deceive themselves into figuring out what is right and wrong. Anyway, that's my rant for today. No wonder Zell behaves the way he does. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's to me, it's a pretty easy, boiled down, fundamental foundation with which you can walk on. Makes life hard, though. I will say that much. It is hard to care. It is hard to love people. It's hard to love yourself, let alone family and people who are garbage people, right. Sometimes,
Yeah, I always felt like if you can't love yourself, how can you even know what love is to give to another?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You think you're all that in a bag of potato chips, do you? You think the Zell ain't worth your time and your effort to watch, to contemplate, to engage with? So you don't want to like, you don't want to subscribe. Perhaps you don't want to comment down below. Well, if that's the case, I don't know what to tell you, Joe, except... Okay. So, yeah. And now we're, after that slight rant... we are down to Matthew 23, and this is a very long. This is what I thought we were getting into last time, and I was excited about it. This is a a scene where Jesus is he's basically sticking around the temple and the temple courtyards, and he's teaching, right? And this is the one where he basically tells all the religious people, like the priests and all that stuff, who are supposed to be the heads of the people of God, you guys suck. He just straight out tells them. And so I like this because it's what I want to say to a lot of religious people myself. And I realize that a lot of people have experienced horrible supposed priests and religious, moral titans of whatever, the Pope and all these people who they make themselves out to be like the highest echelon of society, and they look down their nose at you, and they want to they just seem like they want to crush you or spit on you. You're too low, you're too lowly. And this is the type of person that Jesus is straight up like crushing under his heel and saying, you are exactly what is wrong with the presumptive morons that take God's name in vain. And I love it. It's my favorite. Now, maybe that's a little harsh, and then goes to show my own little bitter, heart in some things. But how about we go ahead and read it and see where it goes. It is a little long though, so just FYI.
All right.
Go ahead.
We can take it off. Religious hypocrites denounce.
Mm-hmm.
Then Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples. The scribes and the Pharisees are seated in their chair of Moses. Therefore, do whatever they tell you and observe it. But don't do what they do, because they don't practice what they teach. They tie up heavy loads that are hard to carry and put them on people's shoulders, but they themselves aren't willing to lift a finger to move them. They do everything to be observed by others. They enlarge their phylacteries and lengthen their tassels. They love the place of honor at banquets, the front seats in the synagogues, greetings in the marketplaces, and to be called rabbi by people. But as for you, do not be called rabbi, because you have one teacher, and you are all brothers. Do not call anyone on earth your father, because you have one Father who is in heaven. And do not be called masters either, because you have one Master, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be your servant. Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You lock up the kingdom of heaven from people, for you don't go in, and you don't allow those entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You devour widows' houses and make long prayers just for show. This is why you will receive a harsher punishment. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to make one proselyte. And when he becomes one, you make him twice as fit for hell as you are. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever takes an oath by the sanctuary, it means nothing, but whoever takes an oath by the gold of the sanctuary is bound by his oath. Blind fools! For which is greater, the gold or the sanctuary that sanctified the gold? Also, whoever takes an oath by the altar, it means nothing, but whoever takes an oath by the gift that is on it is bound by his oath. Blind people, for which is greater, the gift of the altar that sanctifies the gift? Therefore, the one who takes an oath by the altar takes an oath by it and by everything on it. The one who takes an oath by the sanctuary takes an oath by it and by him who dwells in it. And the one who takes an oath by heaven takes an oath by God's throne and by him who sits on it. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You pay a tenth of mint, dill, and cumin, yet you have neglected the more important matters of the law: justice, mercy, and faith. These things should be done without neglecting the others. Blind guides, you strain out a gnat, yet gulp down a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they're full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup, so the outside of it may also become clean. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which appear beautiful on the outside, but inside are full of dead men's bones and every impurity. In the same way, on the outside, you seem righteous to people, but inside you're full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! You build the tombs of the prophets and decorate the monuments of the righteous, and you say, if we had lived in the days of our fathers, we wouldn't have taken part with them in shedding the prophets' blood. You, therefore, testify against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up, then, the measure of your father's sins. Snakes, brood of vipers, how can you escape being condemned to hell? This is why I am sending you prophets, sages, and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you will flog in your synagogues, and hound from town to town. So all the righteous blood shed on the earth will be charged to you, from the blood of the righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah, son of Berechiah,
Yep.
Berechiah, whom you murdered between the sanctuary and the altar. I assure you, all of these things will come on this generation. Harsh words throughout that thing there.
Yeah. Like, it's interesting because the harshest things Jesus has to say, right? The harshest things that Jesus ever has to say to anybody are religious people. And that hopefully that tells people something, right? That he recognizes and he understands those people who are meant to be the top of the hierarchy when it comes to morality. He realizes that those who sit there and they themselves are clearly corrupt, those are the people he despises the most, that he finds the most offensive and is the most vocal against. And rightly so. And so, like, my view of things when it comes, like, it's interesting. So when I was an atheist reading this, it kind of floored me that when I read this, that Jesus was so offended by this, because he was echoing my own disgust at the lawless and the injustice. The people, like, one of the things he says here, I thought it just was like, oh my God, that's exactly how I feel. It's like people go to church and will tithe their money, right? They'll give $10,000 to the church and then go and, like, beat their wife. And it's like my brain explodes. You have no idea how much rage I have to hear something like that. You know, priests who go and, you know, hurt kids, right? And, like, destroy lives when they themselves are on the pulpit that next Sunday giving a sermon about, oh, you know, sexual immorality or whatever, you know, it doesn't matter. It's like, it's so deeply offensive to me. And here is Jesus saying, yeah, bro, me too. You know, it's like, so yeah.
And this is very relevant today too. If you scroll back up to like 3-4, Matthew 23 verse 3 and 4, it really relates very heavily with, like, the politics of today too.
Right. Yeah. To do.
Therefore, do whatever they tell you and observe it. Don't do what they do, because they don't practice what they teach. Number 5. Number 4. tie up heavy loads and put them on people's shoulders, yet they themselves are unwilling to lift a finger to do anything. They don't know how to do their own jobs, and
and it's like it's this right here, right? It's like the thing that they love is not the thing that they're supposed to be there for, which is the love of God, to show his justice, his mercy, his love, and his concern for people. They're there to be told, hey, Mr. President, or Mr. whoever, Justin Trudeau, whoever it is. They love the cameras, they love the flash, they love the people knowing their name, they love I get the fancy suits, and I get to look important, I get to sound important, but I'm not doing anything actually important because it doesn't have any true feet and hands. I will praise the fisherman that brings in fish to feed our family 10 times before I listen to anything some guy
playing golf 10
exactly
times a fucking week.
Who cares? So but it's exactly that, right? It's like that's the opposite of being humble. A good example. Look, and I don't know much about him, but to me it's a good example of what humility actually is by seeing what's his name? Neo. What's the guy's name? Do you know who I'm talking about? Keanu Reeves. He is a perfect example of somebody who
I agree
is famous, but his actions belie any sort of the pride and the exaltedness of his station, whether it's pressed upon him or not. He's like, no, I'm going to take the bus, man. I don't really need.
He just takes the subway.
I'm just take the subway. I'm good, right? Like I don't need. Like he has
that one video where he's like, he's on the subway and he gives up his seat for just old lady kind of thing.
To be clear, he has lots of toys, he has lots of wealth, and he's gotten himself a lot of things, but the difference between him and somebody else who purposely goes off to flash it to get the attention, like that's a world apart in how people ought to really to behave in that way, and to put on that high place. And so I love that. Like I think he's a good example of, like, even at the highest echelon of popularity, one can still behave like a bloody human being and not look down and denigrate people, and even still love them and help them, which is what he does. Like, I mean, I don't think to my knowledge, again, I'm just saying, if he's doing it, with stuff on the back burner, hey Matt, then obviously, like, if he's got a camera crew watching him give his lunch to a homeless guy, then okay. Like, to me, look, I don't have those eyes. If he's doing that, then
TikTok
okay.
Influencers do that all the time,
right? But that's my point, right? It's like, we're gonna go around. Mr. Beast seems like a similar guy. Like, sometimes it's like it's obviously a part of his shtick, but look, again, it's just my point simply being is there are ways in which you can be humble in those stations, and it's difficult.
I don't consume too much like Mr. Beast content or know the insides or anything like that, but he's obviously a big influencer and he uses social media to make money, but he also gives away a lot of money, supposedly.
Fair enough. Like, I mean, I don't know the guy. I'm not trying to disparage anybody in there and the way that they make money or anything like that. I really don't. Frankly, I don't care. I just really don't care that much. If he is showing a measure of love and concern for other people, cool. I'm fine with you. Like, I don't care. But there are some people who do it with wrong motives, and this is what I feel is really encapsulated is the motives and the actual practicality of their station or their lives is almost completely devoid of anything positive. So, one other note I'll just kind of say about this. I
have one more thing about our previous conversation about the greed and whatnot.
Do it up.
Like the opposite of like the Mr. Beast or with the whatever, where there's The one that comes to my mind is the Walmart family. Um, Walton, the Walton family. It's like some of them are they're like some of the richest people in the world, and they're notorious for being extremely greedy and donating. It's like they have like between the three top people, they have $55 billion each. And they only donate like a couple 100,000 once in a while or something like that. It's like, I don't know. There's some pretty evil, damn evil, greedy people in the world.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to one of those things, right? Store up your treasures in heaven kind of thing. I mean,
exactly.
That guy that spent all his time. Yeah. And the guy that spent all his time in the world, building another barn so he can have 7 more entire, silos full of grain, and then he dies the next day. I was like, well, that was maybe you should have just been nice for 7 days, and maybe that would have been better. Right.
Sam Walton died. Each of his heirs, wife, and 6 kids got 17. So between 7 people, they got $17 billion. That's almost $100 billion. I don't know if you realize how big a billion actually is.
And for his time, like nowadays, it's
million. There was a good comparison. Here it is. So 1 million seconds is about 12 days. 1 billion seconds is about 32 years. That is a gigantic difference. And think about that in dollar sense. $12 versus
32
12 days.
Yeah. However,
like $3,200.
Yeah.
Like that gap is unbelievable. And that's just 1 billion, and they have 17 billion each. No one needs that much money.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, my view of it is like it depends on how they use the money, right? It's if they're just bigging it up for themselves with I think people have every right to like have their toys and everything like that, but in the end, It's like how does one yeah.
That's one of the biggest problem questions of the century right now that we don't necessarily have a solution for, because we're the poor people. We can't tell them how to spend their money, and sure, the government can like tax them more, maybe. I don't know. There's tax breaks for the rich. We hear about that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's yeah.
Anyway, didn't want to digress too much.
No, that's fine. No, I get
that's
you.
The stuff I think about all the time. There's so many problems, and
I think to me it's my general position on it is Sam Walton was one of the richest people in the world when he died. He was also one of the better ones as he came up in poverty. He knew what it was to be broke. His family, though, greed effects. Yeah, exactly. Well, and this is my, in some sense, it's a bit of a political position, right? And so, which is why, because I'm trying to keep this one just strictly as a more spiritual or religious focus, I won't go into it too much. That's not to say you can't voice it, and I'll voice mine as well. But the problem I have isn't with wealth. It's with how people treat wealth, right? Whether it's their wealth or other people's wealth or anything like that. And it's like it's a different sphere. Not that they don't cross, but a good example is
it really is.
Right. It's similar to saying like people who donate in church, right? Or people who donate to certain causes, regardless of church. Let's say certain causes, right? My issue is people just wantonly donating to an organization that they know nothing about is just as much of a heinous or an irresponsible use of money or wealth as it is to hoard it and just spend it on yourself, right? And it goes back to the principles that I hold, the principles that I feel like
that makes sense,
that are expressed here, right? It's like, are you using whatever you have? It could be your cell phone, it could be your wallet, it could be your car. Are you using it in a way in which honors a principle of love for God, for your neighbor, even for your enemy, right? And that's not, I don't think it's meant to be like, 5 years from now, or here's a plan of how if I have like $10 billion, whatever it is, this is how I'm going to do it, every step of the way. It's more of a, in this moment, because you don't know if you're dead tomorrow. First of all, in this moment, what can I do with what I've got? My own body? Maybe I lose an arm tomorrow. I don't know, right? How do I use that left arm now? And be conscious now, because tomorrow doesn't exist, and neither does yesterday, really, right? It's important to live now with what you have. And so I guess my position from a spiritual, from a religious point of view is, whatever you've got, don't take it for granted. Be thankful, one, and two, use it in a way in which it is loving, and that doesn't mean that savings is bad either. Like, you can save it, but to what purpose, right? Are you saving it to give away, to build a house, to protect your kids? The spirit in which you're doing it is important. Everything, not just your money, but so from a purely spiritual and religious point of view, in my estimation, everything ought to go through that lens, right? So, yeah. From a political side of things, maybe we'll do an actual political podcast. I kind of want to, because I have some friends who are clearly much more traditionally left than I am, and I'm probably much more right than they are. And I'd love to see where the clashes go. But I also like to debate and throw stuff in. But anyway, hopefully does that make sense? I don't know. Is that fair to say? I'm not sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Just, if I could find it, I'd give you the link to the video I once watched. Most billionaires, when they donate, aren't actually donating. Between tax breaks and the way they donate, they don't actually lose any money, like, at all. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, that's a political. That's a political one. I'm gonna steer away from that one. So I think my religious point of view on that, and
for sure.
Yeah, and it is. Look, this goes back to something that's actually an important point religiously as well. My view on the world is very similar to how a Buddhist views the world. The Buddhist first tenet of their teachings is that everything is suffering, that nothing is fair, and I'm not convinced that it's supposed to be. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't strive to be fair and treat everybody equally, kind of thing. Give them the opportunity to get with that level of fair treatment, what they will, and how through their own effort, that kind of thing. But the world isn't fair, and whether it's a billionaire or whether it's a person who was born in the middle of a volcano or what, I don't care what it is. Like, it's just not. And that I don't think striving for this is partly, this could probably tie into some of my political views, and I'm not trying to go there, but I'm just saying, like, trying to make the universe or the world fair it's almost a non-starter, right? And to get upset or to get too caught up in the Waltons having more money than the 2 cents a day that some Indian kid might be getting, who actually probably shouldn't get any money because he's actually considered in society something that's called an untouchable, If you want to look up the caste system in India, it's horrible, like absolutely horrible. Like you're not even allowed to look at them. You're not allowed to look at the untouchables because they'll dirty you. They're basically evil incarnate. And maybe they wouldn't use that language, but like it's awful. And it's like I can rage against that disparity, or I could at least just recognize it, and then in my own personal actions on my day-to-day live within the principle that we've been called to live. And I think that's the only way that won't drive you absolute batshit crazy. Because trust me, I've gone batshit crazy. I've been in the mental hospital because of these reasons. I'm not trying to like, slap people down or dismiss the concerns or anything like that. It will drive you crazy if you realize the totality of the world's injustice and disparity and everything like that. And that's, to me, that's where it's a bit trite, and this is where I'm trying to get back to the religious side of this. That's where the point of it has to come down to the moment by moment trust, the faith that regardless of that disparity, that it is being accounted for, that it will be called to account for those who do have all those blessings and just piss it away in alcohol or lust or whatever exactly whatever is not in the principle of love, that those people will be called to account. Now you could call that hell as punishment. I don't really know if I believe that, but nevertheless it's a recognition that it's a good negative as in it's not nice, motivation for me to believe that there's somebody omniscient, omnipotent, who's keeping track of this, because I'm not, and you're not, we aren't, and if we did try to be, we would suck at it, and we would just become the evil with which we're trying to fight, or that we rail against, and that's the problem. Like, we're not God. We're not, like, I'm not smart enough to fix that disparity between the Waltons and the kid in India who's making 2 cents. I'm not smart enough, and I'm certainly not powerful enough. And even if I manipulated the entire world to give me the power so that I could fix it, I would still fuck it up. Like, I just would. And I think any person, any actual human being who is not just a robot and basically says, let's push the delete button like AI and frickin', Skynet or something like that. Who knows, right? Who knows what their conclusion is going to be? They're like, you guys are all batshit crazy. Click. Let's just make it for robots now, because we're not going to do that evil crap. Yeah, to me, it's just one more reason why I think we're called to trust. It's one more reason why I think it's like, it's not my job. It's just not my job to fix the world. Right. And to try and save it.
Exactly.
And that's literally what sent me to jail. Me thinking that I could fix the world, one pedophile at a time. Like, that's really, like, I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna take this guy out. Well, that, how about that dude? And like, where would it have ended? Where would it have ended? Right? Like, and it didn't end. I went to jail, and guess who's in jail? A lot of criminals. Well, what if they didn't get out? I'm in here. I might as well take care of some. Like, that's how I thought. And it was with that motivation. It was with that passion. It was with that hurt, that pain of recognizing that the world isn't fair and it is suffering. But look, I mean, I'm just going to say it. Thanks be to God, it's not all on my shoulders. It's not on all your shoulders either. And I think that there is a true thread of hope and reality that transcends the immediacy of the horror that we kind of find ourselves into, big or large, big or small, rather, than big or large, bigger or bigger, so, and to me, that's where my faith comes in. That's where my trust, is rested upon, is like,
yep. Yeah, I like that. People let the fear get to them a little too much.
Yeah.
It consumes them.
Yeah. And I think I think it's completely understandable. We want to take charge. We want to have an orderliness. We want to do good. We do. I think even the motivation of, like, even my past sins, right? Like my past criminal acts, I don't think that they were evil. I think everything that a person does that is quote unquote evil, actually almost always, if not always, then like 99.5% of the time, has a good root. It has, we have something designed in us, and those desires and those designs that we have, they are meant to be fulfilled in a correct way. And we seek those things out, and sometimes we, you know, the only thing that makes things evil is a bending or a corruption of what was meant to be good. You know, it's everything that a person does is founded on a good principle, in my opinion. It just gets twisted, you know. So, anyway. And I think this is one of the reasons why Jesus does exactly this. Why he laments. If you don't know what the word lamentation means, it means to pour out in maximum your woe, your despair. And this is what Jesus does over the city of Jerusalem. If you'd like to read this.
Sure thing. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, she who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together, as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, yet you were not willing. Your house is left to you desolate, for I tell you, you will never see me again until you say, he who comes in the name of the Lord is the blessed one.
So here he's quoting Psalm 118. Which is I think this has to do with Jesus's the coming of the kingdom of God, like in its fullness. So, yeah.
That wasn't necessarily a long chapter. It was just a long section.
And we talk a lot.
One.
I talk a lot. I chat. I'm sorry.
Honestly, it was all good conversation, especially with those responses spiritually to the things that we talked about. I think there's some very good clip potentials in there, for sure.
Yeah,
I really liked your responses, for sure.
Yeah, hopefully it's, you know, look, I'm not, and I'll say this, I'll say this as well. I don't claim to be the arbiter of all things correct. I don't. I just try my best to do what I've already said, which is interpret or speak through the lens that I believe is correct to see the world. Unfiltered, I don't think people can ever really see the world unfiltered. We live in a body that is automatically filtering. Like, if you actually understood the complexity of just even seeing, let alone sound and speech and all that stuff, but the complexity of just how the eyeball translates actual reality and then gives it to your brain, and your brain kind of figures out, okay, what am I looking at, and puts it all together. That process is so complicated that it's actually one of the main reasons why AI can't really exist right yet.
Absolutely. Yeah, their visual representations are very messy.
It's too much. It's too much information. Like here's a low res. Like, think of it as this way: we see the world right now as 144p at best. Like, that's high resolution to us, right? Yeah. So if you know like resolutions, there's like 4K, 8K, all that stuff. Imagine actually seeing the world in 2K or 4K, right? Yeah. Your brain cannot process that much information at the same time. So I'll give you a good example. It starts off with, you know, I see a person's face, right? Well, what you're seeing isn't actually a person's face. You're seeing basically some pink and some white and some color irises and some black and some hair and everything like that. all at the same time, you know, with some lips and all that thing. Except there's even more than that. It's more than it's even like there's so much more there. That's like that's actually probably like the lowest res you can get. We'll call it 144. Let's crank it up a little bit. What you actually have is skin. You don't even really see people's skin. You see a person's face, but they have skin and they have a nostril and they have hairs in those nostrils and they have liquid on top of the actual specific bits of your eye. So let's call that what's that? 280? I can't remember what's up. 366. So we've gone to 366, right? You have this liquid on your lips. It's actually moist and it's actually there. And if you looked at it, you actually saw that at the same time that you see the liquid in the eye and the, you know. And then let's go in even deeper. You know, you have actual blood vessels, you have lines, you have things like, if you look at the whites, they're not white, they're actually more like a kind of grayish, right? So it's actually more specific color. And you have lines of blood that are actually pulsing blood in your eye, just your eye, let alone your skin has pores, and those pores are filled with shit, like really bad stuff. It's gross.
Even little creatures, mites. There's mites in the pores of our face. That help us with our skin chemistry, actually.
And you have more hair. You have hair that's protecting your eyeballs. You have, you know, it's like, well, let's go in even deeper. You have this complex mechanism. Let's go deeper even more. So you have cells. Those cells are actually pretty huge. Let's go deeper than that. You have atoms that make up those cells that are making chemicals like go bah, 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 all the time. Let's go even deeper than that. You have subatomic particles. Let's go deeper than that. You have quantum physics. Everything that you see is way more complicated and higher resolution than you will ever be able to perceive, ever.
Right.
And a computer sees all of that all at the same time, and it's paralyzed. We would be paralyzed if we saw any more than 144p. We would be screwed. We would be just like, That's why when you take drugs, you kind of open your eyes a little bit more, and you go from 144 to like 366 or whatever it is, and you start tripping balls because you're seeing the world like it really is. So, anyway, all that to be said, you know, there's a point for me saying that. Resolution, I was applying it to something else.
I know you're talking about how complex it was, the visual cortex and just perceiving with your eyes. I don't remember what you were. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. So that's I know what I was saying. So that's something physical. That's something that we actually have some measure of experience with, right? Like we actually do see. What we don't see is what's right and wrong. Not really. We don't really see the world in full resolution. And it is arrogance, it is pride, nothing short of, to think that we see clearly enough to be able to make decisions that are truly good, that are truly righteous, right? And I think it behooves us to take a step back, recognize that if we see in 144p, we're looking at, we know what is right and wrong the way an 8-bit character knows what's right and wrong. We are way immature. We're children. And our job is to learn, to be open to seek out, to engage with, yes, to sometimes feel hurt. Yeah, to experience, to feel the suffering. Yeah, to feel the suffering. But that's, to me, that's what's so it's kind of what's harsh about our current culture, and it's never been done before, and it's why we have such a high mental health rate, and why we're so paralyzed and we're so messed up right now, is because we're inundated by a world of suffering. Nobody in history up to like 50 years ago even, you know, we had radio and that was bad enough. Now we have full time on your device, in your ass, on your pocket, constantly. Hey, shit's on fire, it's fucking gonna blow up all the time. And we don't think like maybe that's unnatural. Maybe it's not good to be inundated by horror all the time. And maybe we just need to get back to what is happening in your local community. Better yet, what's happening in your family? Why don't you just go talk to your own family and say, how are you? Ignore the rest of the shit. It was never meant for you to carry. It was never meant to destroy your life like it's been destroying your life. Get rid of it. You know? So, Yeah, that's all I'm saying is like there's no wonder why we're so messed up. We're experiencing life morally in a way that is so low, so high intensity for a development that is 8-bit, 16-bit, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's so low, we can't handle it, and we aren't meant to. We're not designed to do that. We're meant to do one breath at a time, one step at a time. Jesus did not have a Mach 5 helicopter, master machine car, whatever you want to call it, just going down the world and saving everybody. He had his feet. He walked from one place to the other. He walked like a kilometer an hour, and he had one person at a time saying, "Oh, you have faith. You're cool. I'm gonna help you. Whatever your situation is right now." He probably never saw them again. And that was enough for Jesus, the best human being on the planet. And we think we're better than him. We can just go around and save the world. No, stop it. It's not your job. And there's a reason why it saved me, because I literally thought that. I'm talking to myself, really. I'm talking to myself when I was 22.
I can tell. I can see that.
I was 22 years old, and I thought there are people getting murdered or raped or, God knows what else happening right now. I physically am willing to go to prison to stop them. So I did, and it destroyed my life, and it destroyed other people's lives, even the people that I hurt. It destroyed their lives, their families' lives. I didn't have the proper resolution, the proper scope and understanding of what my job actually is. And it's not to go, if you think that's your job to go and save the world, think again, buddy. Seriously, don't think that. It's not right. It's not good. It will destroy your life and destroy other people's lives. Please stop. Your life is meant to be lived slowly with love to God and love to your neighbor. That's it. It's that simple. And if you're outside of that bounds, to me, you're going to crash. It's going to be scary, because it was for me. So that's why I believe in this. That's the 100,000th major reason, is because if I didn't believe in this, there would be a lot more dead people, or I would be dead. One of the two, probably both. That's it. And so, I don't know. Hopefully that gets across. I'm trying to be as poignant as possible about it. So.
No, that's pretty much as raw as it can get, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. And I know you even said that you were talking to yourself as well. So, I know you're probably not the only person that needed to hear that kind of thing.
It's funny because I had one purpose in life when I got out of prison. And I literally said it this way: if I could just talk to a kid who is 16 years old, literally, that was my wish of all life. If I could talk to a 16-year-old kid who was not unlike myself, sit down with him and just tell him my story. That's all I wanted to do. And even if he didn't change, but at least gave him the chance that I didn't feel like I got. I didn't get to sit down with a dude who was in his 30s, who really screwed up his life and could tell me, hey, don't make my mistakes, So that's all I prayed. That's literally my only prayer. And I got to do it in 2019. I sat down with a youth kid who I think, I don't know all the specifics and I won't go into names or anything like that, but basically I think it was really rough at home. I think there's divorce and people getting hurt. I think his dad was hurting him or something like that. And he just didn't know. He was a church kid. He actually got to go to church, and he was going to youth group, and he had even better resources than I ever had, I felt,
Right.
And I got to sit with him, and I told him not like that. That was a little, that's probably more intense. But I said, look, there's good reason. There really is. Just take your time, to believe that whatever horrible thing you're going through, whether it's a physical illness, a mental illness, whether it's your parents or your friends or the world itself falling apart around you, I really do believe that there is somebody at the back, figuring this stuff out, that it's all a part of something much bigger than you. and you're not the main character in your story. And that sounds harsh, but you're not, right? The story is bigger than you. You are a part of a larger story that at the end of it, you're going to be like, I'm just glad that I got to participate, because the story is so good. It's so actual, like good as in like, oh, that's a cool thing. It's not just cool, it's good, like the greatest conceivable good that you get to be invited into and participate in if you want it, you know, that it will trump every negative thing that has ever been, not just in your life, but in every possible life. Good, bad, right, wrong, evil. It's crushing all that. And if you trust that, if you just go in with that presupposition, that's that presumption on life, that there's somebody who is good and who's got your back, and it at least will be there through the shit, you know, and has himself been through the shit, you will be okay. And you will be thankful at the end of it. And I believe that. I really do. There's a reason why I'm around. No,
no, that's very well said. And especially when you're saying, like you're not the main character kind of thing. It's like one of the best things that someone ever told me that actually felt like it hurt when I heard it, but realized, like, I mean, it is true, is they just flat out said, in a very honest and loving way, you're not special. And in the sense that you're not the main character, you can still be the main character of your own story, be the main character for yourself, just not, you don't have to force your main characterness on everyone else. Right. That's how I feel.
The world is very large, you know, it is very big. There are a lot of people here, and
billions.
There's like billions upon billions over, and it's not just now, it's over history, over future history.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
It's like,
just that comparison of 12 days versus 32 years.
Yeah.
A million people versus a billion people. There's a lot of people in this world. I don't think people can really grasp that with the puny minds that we have in
like
comparison to the world.
It's that low res problem. We just have a low res problem.
We really do. And I say a lot too, where it's physically and literally impossible to know everything that you could possibly know at every given second of the day or year or lifetime.
I think that's, to me, that's what's so, that's also I mean, this is kind of a side, this is an apologetics things, but that's actually an argument for the existence of God itself, because no entity physically could actually process all of reality in physical temporal existence. It's actually
not
impossible.
Even a computer. Not even a
And so, but it does exist, so far as we can tell. You know, I'm pretty sure I exist, right? And I think that I know. I think that I'm knowable, and I know that I am, and all that stuff. And so there's got to be something underpinning that reality. You know, it's not just accidental. Just, you know, like that's the argument, right? So anyway, it's a more, there's a lot more complicated apologetic argument for that, and maybe we'll get that, we'll get to that at some point, you know, talk about some fun apologetics videos. But anyway,
we covered some good topics, conversations. We got pretty deep.
That's good. Do you feel like that's good for today, or you want to try one more chapter? Or
I don't know, we can go for another chapter.
All right.
Still got half an hour.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm going to grab a coffee because I know it's cooling down right now. So, but let's just go AFK for a second. All right.
Alrighty.
Hi. I'm Zell. Vazelazell. Be super awesome if you wanted to do the whole liking thing. Maybe even do the whole subscribe. Or perhaps you're like me and you just talk too much and you're weird and you want all your weirdness to be out there. In that case, you can comment down below. And if you know and you don't, I won't care. I just saw that now, Coco. Zell strategically used the word shit. I'm not sure I don't know how I feel about me swearing sometimes. I'm weird. I have gone years without swearing. So it's not like I can't. It's like I just don't want to.
I swear often enough.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'll think about it. I don't I don't know if it's a bad thing, personally.
I usually swear when I want to emphasize getting my point across.
Yeah. I think if I were to go back to the lens that I talked about, my view is that sometimes people, the more loving thing to do is to use harsh language. You know, to swear. It connects. If it connects, it's the more loving thing to use it, in my view. Sometimes profanity words hit differently to portray a harsher picture. Yeah. I mean, it's also the principle. It also applies to specific situations. Like, am I going to say it to my grandmother? No.
Right.
Especially not Grandma Gallant. It's like that lady is like, I don't know.
I think that's why it's interesting in like Japan or Chinese, they have like casual speak and formal speak, the way that you talk or the enunciation.
Right.
The order of the words or whatever is somewhat similar in my eyes.
Yep, no, I can see it. Okay, shall we continue? I promise I won't. I won't go on another sermon.
It's all right.
I need to change something anyway.
Matthew 24. Destruction of the temple predicted. As Jesus left and was going out of the temple complex, his disciples came up and called his attention to the temple buildings. Then he replied to them, "Don't you see all these things? I assure you not. Not one stone will be left here on another that will not be thrown down." Signs of the end of the age. While he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples approached him privately and said, "Tell us, when will these things happen, and what is the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Then Jesus replied to them, "Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Messiah,' and they will deceive many. You are going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, because these things must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these events are the beginning of birth pains."
So, signs for the end of the age. This is usually where the conversation ends up turning to a lot of Christians about the rapture. The idea that Jesus is coming back and that he's going to scoop up all the Christians, like in what's called what's that movie called? End of Days. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, no, it's the one with Nicolas Cage. Left Behind. The Left Behind books and the Left Behind series. Yeah. That didn't exist up until like maybe 200 years ago. For all of recorded history, the end of the age was the end of an age, not like tomorrow or not. It's yeah, even if it did mean that, it wasn't referring to a rapture of any kind, right? Again, this is my view of it. There's something called premillennialism, postmillennialism. I'm not going to get into any of that because it's a whole rabbit hole we could go down. But it's a question of whether or not Jesus was referring to an age way down ahead of time, or what I think is the most likely thing, which is probably what I'll out myself as a preterist, right? A preterist is the age in which he is actually talking to, that he's talking to a specific group of people that within their lifetime, these things will happen, not 2,000 years from now in a modern society where American evangelicalism is the highest pinnacle, most arrogant, high, thing that you can think of. That wasn't even on the radar. It wasn't in his mind. So he said, watch out that no one deceives you. Here's the first clue. Watch out that no one deceives you, for many will come in my name and say, I am the Messiah, and I will deceive many. So first thing is, don't be deceived. So when there's a book that comes out saying, oh, in the 1986, oh, actually it's going to be in 1999. Oh, it's actually going to be in all these predictions of when the rapture and everything, they've all been wrong. Why? Because they've been deceived. It says it right there. Watch out that nobody deceives you. So anyway, no. So one of the things he says, I don't know if he says it right here. I think we have to continue going, actually. Anyway, we'll have to keep going, but I just want to put that in there as people kind of misunderstanding.
Earthquakes.
Yeah.
What I thought was interesting is 8. All these events are beginning of birth pains.
Right.
Relating it to birth pains and like a new age is coming, sort of thing.
Right. And so he's kind of giving them, it's like the kingdom is going to just start. It's going to be born, right? And it's just a start. So some people think that the only way that the kingdom of God will actually, that any sort of, it won't be a rapture, but like that God's kingdom on earth will be fulfilled, is that every person everywhere becomes a Christian. So that's another view and that's until that happens, there can be no destruction or new peeling back. Anyway, it's a whole thing. That's
interesting.
Yeah. And it's like, but I mean, it also kind of makes sense, right? Like, if you understand the church as being the thing that is being born, in this case, it's the beginning of birth pains, and you're going to be, it's going to be a hard time, that's the beginning. So when does it end? When you're fully mature, presumably, right? And so what is a fully mature church? In theory, it's that everybody believes, which is why there's a lot of people who are so voracious in the way that they approach you about their faith. I'm not like that. Sense. Yeah, I'm not like that. But like, again, I'm just giving you different worldviews or different views within the Christian sphere of why some people are so, like, they are on it. I mean, there are some people who like go door to door, and whether they're, whether it's accurate to call them Christians or a Christian sect or anyway, it gets crazy sometimes. So anyway, he continues here.
Persecutions predicted. Then they will hand you over for persecution, and they will kill you. You will be hated by all nations because of my name. Then many will take offense, betray one another, and hate one another. Many false prophets will rise up and deceive many, because lawlessness will multiply. The love of many will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be delivered. This good news of the kingdom will be proclaimed in all the world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come.
So that's kind of like, so they interpret that in saying, well, at the very least, the other more common one, I should say, is every nation that has ever existed must hear the gospel fairly, and only after that has happened, then. So, but if that's true, here's a logical question, or logical, point of this. If that's true, the way to stop the end from coming, the end of the world, presumptively, is to just not go and say anything about Jesus. Right. To make sure that not every nation, we'll do our due diligence. We'll get every single nation except for one. We'll like leave out North Korea or something, right? And then we'll never have the world will never end. We'll be forever. you know? So like, okay, well, clearly it's not what he's saying. And here's another important point. Who is Jesus talking to right now? To his disciples, if I remember correctly. The disciples approached him, and then they said, hey, tell us about this. You know, when's the last age? So when he says, then they will hand you over for persecution, and they will kill you. Does you mean somebody in 2,000 years from now? Doesn't seem to. I mean, it's pretty arrogant to think that that's what he's talking about. That's not to say that people who live now won't be persecuted and won't be handed over because they're Christians and get killed. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like, it's presumptive that the end of the world and everything like that, the end of the age, that can be predicted because a few people get persecuted in 2002 or whatever, you know, so. So I just feel like it's a presumption. Okay, here's the rapture stuff.
Great tribulation. So, when you see the abomination that causes desolation spoken of by the prophet Daniel standing in the holy place, let the reader understand these. What does that say?
These are most likely Matthew's words to his readers.
Oh, okay. Spoken by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. A man on the housetop must not come down to get things out of his house, and a man in the field must not go back to get his clothes. Woe to pregnant women and nursing mothers in those days. Pray that your escape may not be in the winter or on a Sabbath, for at that time there will be a great tribulation, the kind that hasn't taken place from the beginning of the world until now, and never will again. Unless those days were limited, no one would survive. But those days will be limited because of the elect. If anyone tells you then, look, here is the Messiah, or over here, do not believe it. False messiahs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. Take note, I have told you in advance. So if they tell you, look, he's in the wilderness, don't go out. Look, he's in the inner rooms. Do not believe it. For as the lightning comes from the east and flashes as far as the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. Wherever the carcass is, there the vultures will gather. The coming of the Son of Man. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not shed its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the celestial powers will be shaken. Then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and then all the peoples of the earth will mourn. And they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. He will send out his angels with a loud trumpet, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other. Interesting.
So the fundamental question about a lot of this and how to interpret it is, if we were to apply the same principles that we've been applying for the rest of Scripture. Yo, Yellowhammer, how's it going, bud?
Hey, Adam.
Adam, good sir. Oh, yeah. Oh, I have a thingy.
Holy shnikes! Hey, get off my property! Run for it!
How's it going, buddy? Excuse me. So, if we were to apply the same principle that we've been applying for the rest of the Scripture thus far anyway, and recognize that Jesus likes to tell things in parables, that he tends to use like poetic language from the Old Testament. He's pointing, a lot of this stuff is kind of pointing back to things that have happened in the past. even if we were to take this as a literal, thing, there could be a few things happening here. But I still think that the people that he's talking to aren't thousands of years, and that's too simplistic. What I'm saying is the people he's primarily talking to are the people in front of him, right? His disciples of that age. So when I say at the end of the age, presumably he means somewhere within that lifespan of the people he's talking to, right? Now, that's not to say that there aren't fundamental truths and lessons to be taken that one can extract, boil down to, and apply in your life, which is called exegesis, right? So that's the technical term for it. I do think that the practical application here is he's talking about events that are going to happen in their lifetime, and that to me is a correct way in which to read these passages. Now, whether or not he's saying it, there's literally going to be a dark sun and literally going to be the stars falling out of the sky, or does he mean, like some poetic language and some of the things that have happened in Scripture, like stars often meant, the kings of other nations. Those people will fall. The celestial powers will be shaken. Does that mean like the spiritual world? The actual spiritual reality? Maybe it's possible. But I think it's also just as equally possible that the actual foundation upon the society that these people live is going to be shaken. And that's actually what does happen, for the record, in, I believe it's 70 AD. So within 30 or 40 years of Jesus' lifetime, the Roman Empire comes in and destroys the entire city of Jerusalem, particularly taking every single stone from the Jerusalem temple, and decimates the way that the Jewish people have been for most of their lives worshiping in Israel. And so that, to me, is like the foundation of the celestial powers. Everything that their religious lives are built upon are getting torn apart. They're being shaken, right? So their daily sacrifice at the temple, that still to this day does not exist. There's a whole different religion that's in that place, the Islamic religion, right? The Dome of the Rock, or whatever you call it, right? So the tribulation, the times of trouble that are going to happen here, they happened for these people in their lifetime. Their entire society was just basically wiped out, and they became, anyway. So, and that's because they rebelled. If I remember, I don't know the whole story, but they rebelled, and I can't remember the whole shtick. So,
my silly ancient alien brain sees 30 and 31 as like spaceships coming down to invade Earth.
Yeah, good old ancient
aliens. Yeah.
Dad really likes the ancient aliens things too. Hey, and to be fair, the thing that Ancient Aliens at least talks about that I don't think people who read the Bible talk about enough is the story of things like the Illuminati Elish, or the Sumerian text, the Sumerian not tablet steles, and everything like that, right? So I mean, the Sumerian people predate, at least from what we can tell structurally, the Bible. They predate the written texts. Now, yep. The question is because something is written down that's the largest and most lengthy story in all of history, or did it adopt from another story that's a prototype? Like, I mean, people can just assume that the Sumerians are the prototype for society, and maybe they were, I don't know. And that the Bible borrowed from those stories and applied them for their own purpose. Maybe. I don't know, right? I don't think we can know. But what I can tell you is the Bible is a written record of a oral tradition that spans who knows how long. And oral traditions, we know, based on oral traditions that exist even today, that those can last for thousands of years, virtually unchanged. So Anyway, I think, but that being said, as a person who believes the Bible and what it is, at least fundamentally as a revelatory expression of who God is and what he's planning to do and what he has done on earth, I'm not threatened, and I don't think anybody else should be threatened by other societies that have predated that text, that story. And you should go read it. I think you should. I think you should read all stories, frankly, because all peoples, all stories will. They even the worst argument in the world still allows you to learn something. I think it's still a beneficial thing to do. Yeah, Sumerian texts, very cool. They're Sumerian writings.
Yeah, they're fascinating. I love them.
Can you do a reaction? Perhaps one day if you want to send it to me. I won't be doing it today. We're getting close to our ending, but perhaps I can. Here. Not yeah, if you wanted to send it to me. Cool. Yeah, I'll take a look. I'll take a look in the near future. Thanks, man. Okay. Yeah, anyway, I think you get my point, I think, on this particular area. Go ahead.
Parable of the fig tree. Now learn this parable from the fig tree. As soon as its branch becomes tender and sprouts leaves, you know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see all these things, recognize that he is near, at the door. I assure you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. No one knows the day or hour. Now, concerning that day and hour, no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, except the Father only. As the days of Noah were, so the coming of the Son of Man will be. For in those days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah boarded the ark. They didn't know until the flood came and swept them all away. So this is the way the coming of the Son of Man will be. Then 2 men will be in the field, one will be taken and one will be left. 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and one left. Therefore be alert, since you don't know what day your Lord is coming. But know this, if the homeowner has known what time the thief was coming, he would have stayed alert and not let his house be broken into. This is why you also must be ready, because the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect.
Does the sun know the hour? Nope, not according to this. So now concerning that day or hour, only the Father knows. So, which
gotta be ready.
Which again, this is another, to me, another bolstering of like those who claim, the rapture or the end of times and everything like that is going to be on this day at this time. It's like, it says right there, nobody knows. One dude knows, God the Father. So.
Then the chapter before was just like, don't be deceived.
Yeah. So
lots of deception.
Yeah, a lot of deception.
Okie dokie. Faithful service to the Messiah. Who then is a faithful and sensible slave, whom his master has put in charge of his household, to give them food at the proper time? That slave whose master finds him working, when he comes will be rewarded. I assure you, he will put him in charge of all his possessions. But if that wicked slave says in his heart, my master is delayed, and starts to beat his fellow slaves and eats and drinks with drunkards, that slave's master will come on a day he does not expect and at an hour he does not know. He will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the hypocrites. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Yeah, they always say that whenever they bring up hell.
Yeah, it's an interesting descriptor for sure. It's like,
Gnashing of teeth.
I'll let you have an imagination of what that might be like, kind of thing. It's like, look, there are the way I look at it is there are consequences. Is he all knowing? I think that God is all knowing. Yes, and that Jesus is God in flesh. The question is, if God the Son does not know the end time, the last day and time, then he can't be God, right? What I would say is that this falls under the category of God's power, however. So God is all powerful and he's all knowing, and what he's also powerful enough to do is to limit the knowledge that he has, right, by becoming human and limiting himself to human knowledge. And so as he is incarnated as a human being, he is limited in that limited sphere because he has the power to do so, because he's all powerful, and therefore the Son, at least in the incarnation of Jesus, does not have that knowledge because he has emptied himself, or he's limited himself anyway, to not possessing that knowledge at that time. So I think that's
Jesus is only human, he's in human flesh kind of thing. So it's the limitations of a human, I guess. Right,
because he wanted to experience life as a human being, right? So all knowledge and all power that Jesus has as God, he has limited himself in his human form, and so he's not privy to the information because that was the goal, that was his aim, that was his desire, to be limited so that he can live a full human life. But I do think that Jesus was a prophet in his own way. So he gave its signs, but only Allah, God in Aramaic. Yeah, Allah knows it. Yeah, and you know, you can believe that. That's fine. I believe that Jesus was the Son of God, and yeah, it's fine. But yeah, thanks for your question.
I'm neutral as usual. You said it at the start of the stream, and you're spot on.
That's right. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Anyway, so in terms of this passage, I think it's one of the things I think Jesus is trying to get at least the people he's talking to immediately to get their heads around is that you shouldn't take the important things and take them for granted. That you ought to act as if you have a master who is coming home soon, and you've left his house in a pigsty, and it's your job to kind of clean it up and make sure things are orderly. It behooves you, whether you know the master is coming right now or 10 years from now, to keep things tidy, to get things tied in a bow, sort of thing. But anyway, so it's good. Just like the other sons of God in the Bible, the peacemakers. Yeah, I mean, I think that I understand the sons of God through Adam and everything like that as well, and through Christ a second time. That's why they call him the second Adam. Those were the peacemakers.
I didn't know that. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah, that Jesus referred to as the second Adam. Yeah, it's because it's actually comes from, I believe it comes from Paul's letters later on, and he talks about that the humanity that we have in Adam, or in the first man, that's a, what would you say? That we're rooted in that kind of humanity which is fallen, right? And and we need to. The reason why they call it to be reborn or born again is the idea that it is through God's Spirit, through the Holy Spirit, via Jesus and confession in him, that we are born again, and that we are, and it's because of that being reborn that he's considered the second man, or the second Adam, the second, the perfected, or the correct version of mankind that we ought to be associated with. And so those who are in Adam rather than in Christ, which is why I call that's where that language kind of comes from, that there's a division there, right? There's fallen in Adam or alive in Christ kind of thing. So and they call it, sometimes they'll say like dead in Adam as well, is another way of saying it. And that's because everybody who has ever descended from Adam dies. It's not meant as like a harsh thing. It's just like there's the consequence of just death, the consequence of original sin and all that. But there's the promise that those who are in Christ, that we will rise again, or that we'll live again. We will rise immortal. There's a text of it, of course. Indeed, the example of Jesus to Law 1 is like that of Adam. He created him from dust. Then he said to him, be, and he was. In International Quran. Cool. Yeah, we definitely have a similar core text.
For sure. I've noticed some similarities between like some different religions in the world, and like my neutral self, I can't really claim to know, or I can only kind of think upon my own lens, like you were talking about. I in my agnostic views, I don't see why there isn't any reason why God can't have multiple versions, multiple avatars of himself, kind of thing.
Right. I would agree with that to a degree, but what I would say is that if God has a singular message for the world, if maybe he doesn't, but it maybe he does. I think he does. It would be counterproductive to his point or his desire to give multiple revelations that contradict one another.
That's actually understandable.
So, like, if I wanted, like, again, we'll go back to the Sims thing, right? Like, I could have multiple characters. Totally, 100%, no problem, right? If my desire was just to be incarnate and have a conversation and chat with people and have a good time and then peace out when I'm done. But if my view, or if my desire for the world is to save it, then I would go in the way and save it the way I could. Right. And I would be pretty consistent in the way in which people would get saved. I wouldn't say, maybe I wouldn't. I mean, if there's multiple ways, there's multiple ways, but I don't know. It doesn't.
I get what you're saying. Like, why wouldn't your message be consistent between all characters? In this case, all religions, kind of thing. With what I was relating to, what I was talking about.
Common point, there would be contradictions if they are all true. Well, it depends on.
This is the hard stuff.
Yeah, it's fine. It's not a big deal.
But it's good. Like, I mean, it's good conversation for sure. I like to understand as much as I can.
I guess I'm trying to come with there must be a consistent message. Right. Yeah, and I think so too. I don't think you need to capitalize everything, just for the record. The question I guess I have with these ideas is, are there multiple ways in which we attain X, whatever X is? Let's say for Christianity is about salvation. It is about going from being dead, for sure, to being in being alive, which is pretty stark. Like that's a, you know, you're either dead or you're not dead kind of thing, right? Whether or not we are just desiring multiple ways not to be dead, or there is a way that has been given to us, so that's fine. A way in which we can actually be alive. And one of the things that concerns me, at the very least, this is where maybe I'll, you know, I'll have to argue it better later. But the thing that concerns me is that the way in which the divine has given explicitly in person, in a way in which a person can live, right? People are not wanting that way to live and going to find another way that may or may not be true. Like, and I guess the question is, do they actually work? Is it true? And fundamentally, that's where I end up leaving my, you know, staking my position, right? It's like, I don't really care if there are multiple ways. I want the actual way. I actually want to live, kind of thing, right? And so I'm not keen on, and that's so my position has always been, and it still to some degree is, if what I believe in and what I stake my hold on is not true, then everything, and Jesus even himself says it's like, then everything, all your faith is in vain. Actually, it's Paul who says it later on. Paul says that if this is not true, everything that you have invested in this, it's in vain. And that's true of every other religious belief and every other path that people follow. It's like, we have a really incredible ability to design and to even believe in all these different stories that do exist, that all tell us different things. And if they contradict one another, it seems to me that already discredits at least one of them. They can't all be true.
It's
right?
counterintuitive.
And that's an actual problem, you know? So I would say that my general point is, they can't all be right. They can all be wrong. We can all be wrong. Like, that's an actual possibility. Or one can be correct. And my desire just is to find what is true and what is correct. Because that's the only thing that could possibly be something on which I can stand that is rock, that is not sand. Right?
That makes sense.
Yeah. I'm not trying to dismiss things out of turn.
Right.
My point, my only view is to do what Jesus basically says, right? To test everything. Hold on to what is good, right? So if something about a system of belief falls short, it doesn't make sense logically, theologically, whatever, and practically, then I don't incorporate it.
It reminds me of the parables of sowing the seeds. Some will fall on rock and ground, and some will be taken away, whatever the case.
And to give to your point in terms of being agnostic, like that's essentially where I was coming at it as well, right? And again, to your point of like multiple, you know, avatars or versions or teachings and everything like that, I do actually believe, like, I actually really appreciate Buddhism, right? Like, I've studied Buddhism to a degree, not in super depth or anything like that, but there are some teachings in Buddhism that are absolutely like super insightful and completely practical and worth applying in one's life, right? But just because a teaching in an entire religion is good does not mean that entire religion is truthful or is grounded in logic and reason and is worth completely laying one's feet upon, right? A foundation for one's feet. So, yeah, in my experience, Christianity is the only one that has shown the worth to put under one's feet. But if you choose otherwise, that's
your choice.
You're a free creature. You're a free creature, and I thank God for that. Cool. I do have dinner cooking here pretty quick, so I should be ending. Yusuf, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate the question and the conversation. It was really great. Lunar, of course. Thanks for the follow there, Yusuf. What was I going to say? I actually, just to your point there, I actually agree with you. I do think that the foundational philosophies that you find in all good teachings, I think, can be found in a Christian text, personally, which, for the record, is founded and mostly comprised upon the Jewish texts, so
Right.
Which also is part of the cornerstone to the Muslim text, the Quran, at some level too. So I'm not saying that there aren't good teachings, but I do think that you can find the same principles and some of the same extremely good teachings in Scripture, completely. That being said, sometimes other cultures have a different view of it and have a different experience of it and have a different way of telling that story or that teaching that can be just as beneficial. So I'm not opposed to reading those and applying them. So, but yeah, before we go, let me do this real quick. Wow. Yeah, if you want to follow, sweet. Otherwise, thank you again so much for hanging out. Again, I am Zelazel, the Zelazel. Until next time, I hope you're having a very blessed weekend and a blessed week. See you.